Hi, I'm Rachel McCloud. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach, and I help people do the brain work for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And so that's really what I'm really doing. But one of the big keys to this is that we know that we're resolving these symptoms. Um, Gosh, what I'm going to say to it's not going to make sense when I say it like this, but I'm going to say it like this anyway. Um, our brain then is really capable of resolving the symptoms and the consequences to having these symptoms in our life as well. That's one of the fun parts. So I do like to help people make their symptoms stop. But what I really love also is to watch once those symptoms are show us exactly where the brain is saying, I can't process this. I have nothing for this. I don't know how to work this out. And so when we get in there and help the brain resolve that one issue, all of a sudden it starts resolving the symptom, but it also starts solving problems in your life and in people's life. And this is really the fun part. This is where, when that's done, the brain is like, oh, okay, now I can resolve this. Now I can do this. Now I can do that. And that's really, really wonderful because when I'm doing this work with people with complex childhood trauma or complex PTSD, who have grown up in systems where they have been abused and their entire programming has been conditioned to live with, dance with abusers and invite in abusers, and their system actually cannot keep abusers out of their world, and they cannot set healthy boundaries with abusers, and that causes more post-traumatic stress. So it really perpetuates this cycle. And no, right, this is not what we're doing here. And by solving their complex trauma issues, then also this helps them become abuser proof. This actually helps them start to close the doors and close the boundaries, and to call people around them higher. And often abusers don't like that and will run fleeing. Um, and so, but they have to be able to do this, and their brain has to be able to generate the coding and the wiring and the conditioning for this, and the subconscious programmings for this. And that's really what I help people do, the behind the scene works of becoming abuser proof. Um, and it's really, really powerful. And so that's what today we're going to talk about, is one necessity for people to here, I've written this down, okay? The title of today is A Necessity for Becoming Abuser Proof for People with Complex PTSD. Okay, so there's tons of things out there, but if you've got complex PTSD, your system will need to be able to do this one thing. If your system cannot do this one thing, you will not be able to do the rest of the things required to get out of relationships with abusers or transform your relationship with abusers, which is what we need. Whether you leave or stay is your business, but we really need your brain to transform the relationship with them. And that could mean many, many things, including leaving them, all sorts. There's so many great things that happen from this. We can talk about that later. It's a whole nother process. Um, but this one thing is just really, really important. So, and there was something that just came up in my mind that I was like, ooh, I'm going to totally talk about that. So let's see. Okay, I can just get into the topic. Oh, yeah. This is what I was going to say, that lots of people are talking about, when you're in a relationship with abuser, and this can be any abuser. And as a matter of fact, if we have abuser trauma, our brain can actually turn anyone into our abuser. It can start viewing them as our abuser, whether they are there or not, whether that's actually happening or not. This often happens in parent-child relationships, where the parent's brain will wrap around in a different way because of trauma, and because the brain is trying to heal from trauma, and it's using anything it can to help you come in contact with the problem. It will turn the child into the abuser, right? So this is something we want to resolve for many, many, many reasons. Okay, so but people will say things like, "Oh, just don't see it that way," or "Why don't you just leave them?" Or "Why don't you just stop going over there anymore? Why don't you just stop putting yourself in the way of abuse?" And for people with complex childhood trauma, the ability to protect themselves has been broken down. It has been disabled, or it hasn't been conditioned in. Perhaps when it was starting to condition in, it was put a halt to very quickly, because in that family system, we don't do that here. You don't protect yourself. You leave yourself wide open. And the child is actually not taught to protect themselves, but is actually taught to leave themselves open and give the abuser access. And so this is not a you should just leave them problem. No, this is we need to heal, and we need to repair some systems, specifically the ability to protect yourself. Okay, and so that's one of the things, but we're going to break that down even further today into one specific thing. And because if you can't do this, you can't turn on your protect yourself function. Okay. And so this what we're going to talk about today, and stay with me because it sounds so simple. You're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. That's too boring. I get that. But there is a lot that goes into this on a brain function level. And you need to know this because you're going to start watching it in your life. You're going to start seeing it everywhere. You're going to be like, Rachel was right. She must know something about this. Yeah. Okay. As we go along, if you have questions, please feel free to put those here. Um, and so, oh, I see Melinda's here. Hi, Melinda. Okay, so I'm going to say it like this, and I'm gonna prove this to you in multiple different ways, because there's two extremes of this. There is so the one thing you need to be able to do to start becoming abuser proof is integrate your anger. Okay, that sounds all easy and all of that. Or you might be able to say, oh, I know where my anger is right now. Here, let me call it up. You might say all kinds of things, but I'm going to talk about this from two ways. And this is fascinating stuff. But ultimately, your system the goal here is that your system needs to be able to run that energy of anger through it, and all the way through past your survival system into the front of your brain, where it is converted into energy, information, and your next levels of communication, wellness, awesome. And this is where your system will be reconfiguring your boundaries. And it will also be rewriting new codes and programs for your subconscious, for your survival system, to allow hey, we don't actually need to panic right here. We don't need to we don't need to withdraw. We don't need to hide back. We don't need to shrink back. We don't need to do that stuff. We can actually just stay and be assertive, assert our boundary. And this is what happens in here is when people can do this, they will come back to me and say, I said no for the first time. I didn't even mean to. It just slipped out of my mouth. Yeah, their system actually created that program for them. The ability to say no. The no was already in there, but their brain could not, because the survival system was interpreting saying no as dangerous. And that needs to be shifted. That is shifted by your internal communication process that is delivered through anger. Anger is one of the things that it's one of our informants that lets us know our boundaries are being violated. It is our boundary communication system. It's part of that. And it's also anger is also really an important thing to see, because it lets us know. I think that in order to have anger is a secondary emotion. And in order to have it, you need to have fear. Fear has to be present, or powerlessness, or hurt, or everything, all of those three, in order to happen. Plus, you have to have a sense of worthiness, right? Now, people whose sense of worthiness is broken, we are not going to see any anger show up. It's going to be so suppressed. It'll be mislabeled in their system. They will not be able to use it or access it. And so one of the first things to integrate your anger may be getting your sense of worthiness coming on. That's not having your sense of worthiness is a post-traumatic stress thing. And it's also something that is supposed to be generating here. And it can get reprogrammed wrong. Right? It can have uselessness programmed where our sense of worth is. And those are really easy to resolve. And if you've had these for a lifetime, you might be like, whatever, Rachel, I've tried everything. I get it. But brains resolve this. And what's happening is that the sense of worthiness is wherever the sense of self is connected and wired to worthlessness. And so brains get in there and can quickly, once they can actually look at this problem and find it with an intervention, because we need to help the brain through its process for rewiring. Once it can do this, it'll say, hey, that doesn't seem about right. And then it'll say, what if we switch this over to, remember when we did that one thing? That was pretty useful. So let's rewire this too. Sometimes we actually are useful, or we do have value. We are smart. Like the brain will assess its own data and it will start picking out the times where you actually had the other thing as well and start wiring to that. And then that creates a balance, right? Not just an all or nothing, worthless, all worthless, right? We should be seeing a vast array of things in there. Okay, so let's come on back to this anger piece. So in these cases where people don't have the ingredients for anger, we want to get those, right? And that then will allow the anger to start running. This can be a really scary time for people because they're like, I have never been able to play with this energy. And now I don't know what to do with it. And their system isn't wired for it. And so there's all these short circuits. And then they're like, I almost said some really bad things or this or that. I'm seeing images. I'm having nightmares of rage ink dreams. I'm having all these things, right? That's their brain's effort to process and wire and move this anger through the system. And we can help. Right? We can start using an intervention where the anger is not being processed well. That's what we want to do. There's going to be lots of places where your anger does process well. And what we want to see is when anger is converted by the brain, right? And that means we have to get it past the survival system, right? That survival system can register anger as pain. And so its job is to get us away from pain and shift us into a survival state. So we might be running and fleeing and fainting and fawning from our own anger. It might be like that. And so whenever we're doing that, we want to use an intervention to open up the survival system, to let the survival system receive communication from our body that we're safe. So we're using a mind-body intervention just to get this part open, because once that's open, all the anger is going to make it through. This is important because the brain will convert anger into kindness. Who knew that you could turn from anger to kindness? You will if you watch your anger complete. You will also notice yourself being assertive. That's important because this is where you get to assert yourself. If you cannot assert yourself, you will choose one of the other options. We only have so many options. You're either going to be assertive or you're going to be passive. You're going to be passive aggressive. You're going to be aggressive or you're going to be manipulative. That's it. And I don't find these to be shaming points. I find these to be indicators that the path to assertiveness is closed. We need that path open. And we need to get that open a lot of times by processing specific emotions that are blocking the door. And so often it's anger. Your brain literally cannot process anger, perhaps because there was a parent who demonstrated unintegrated anger, right? And let me talk about that. And so as they demonstrated this anger, we learned that anger is not safe. So we learned, I don't want to be like them. I'm not going to be like them. We're actually suppressing and shutting down and rewiring and doing a bunch of different things. We're coding ourselves for and building a subconscious program for suppressing our anger. And that means that there's a ton of energy and information that's not getting processed and it's not fueling the things you need fueled. So one of the ways we have problems when we know our anger is not integrated is when it's suppressed. And another one is we know it's integrated when it shifts us into a survival state and it is spraying all over our life. Okay. This is seen often. So I'm not telling you to run around and be angry, right? That's why I'm saying integrate your anger. Process your anger. We want your anger to make it fully through your brain's healing process so you learn about yourself because it's got information about you and what you need. It's got information about your boundaries that nobody else has, that only you have. And so it's really important for your brain to go through this process fully and to complete. But when we're raging, We're knocking things around our house, we're kicking things, maybe we're anger eating, maybe we're anger cleaning. This is a sign it's not processed. It could be processing if you're actually using an intervention with them that works for your brain. This is why I recommend my clients to have on some emotional freedom techniques, or to be using some passive forms of EMDR, so that they can process the anger. This is an effective process if it will complete. Just because you're talking about what you're angry about or you're screaming does not mean your survival system is open and allowing processing. So that means we're screaming and we're yelling, but we're just harming. We're not actually getting this information through the process past the survival system. That survival system is dedicated to keeping you out of pain and away from danger. And being aggressive and angry outward like that is a survival strategy. That's not a healing processing strategy. That's not the system taking all this energy and funneling it to the front of the brain. No, it's been tapped on here and closed out by your survival system. So it's actually going to fuel your survival system, which is more your animalistic side. That's going to scratch and claw and freeze and faint and fall asleep. That is not how we want to use this energy. This is beautiful, phenomenal, amazing energy that we don't need to be afraid of, but we often are. But if we can take this energy, and in the beginning, I really have people do this very, very small. We only want to work with a little bit of that energy, because we want to get the wiring right first. We want to show your brain and you that we can take this anger and move it through the process and watch it show up as kindness and assertiveness. Right? And when that happens, you see it and your system sees it. It's like, oh, maybe we could do something different. I could tell you this till the cows come home, that your anger is safe. Your anger is needed. It's vital. As a matter of fact, if you don't get your anger on, you're not going to become abuser proof. I can tell you all that stuff. But until you're able to experience your brain properly using anger and that energy, you're going to be afraid. Brains need to learn about it, right? In the beginning, they need to experience it. In the beginning, you're like, okay, maybe I'm open to that idea. But if you can take a little bit of anger and get it through the process, and you watch your brain convert it, you're going to have more confidence in yourself. And you might say, well, let me try that again. And then you're going to do it again, right? And again. And then pretty soon, let me see if I can move more anger. Let me instead of taking a little spoon, let me get a scooper and see if I can move that stuff through. Oh no, that didn't work. And then you help it process again. And all of a sudden you can process that whole scoop. You say, maybe I could do this. Or maybe in this moment when I'm feeling angry, maybe I could just be angry in real time. I think I could do that. And if you can actually successfully do that, you've just opened an area of where it's safe for you to be angry and to process and integrate your anger. Integrated anger has an entirely different feel to it than suppressed rage, suppressed anger, than aggressive anger that's being utilized by your survival system. The anger that is being used by your prefrontal cortex is going to have your values, it's going to have your morals, it's going to have your resources, it's going to have your skills. That's where they all live. That anger has to get in there to mix with them to get that stuff on it. And it's going to have accurate solutions. And so we want that energy to go through here. If it doesn't make it past the survival system, it will just be fuel. It will just be that energy of restlessness, that energy of clenched body. It will just be that stuff, and you will be fueling your body and your survival state. And that part of the brain and body doesn't know how to make thriving. It only knows how to survive. That's why our life looks like survival land. It's all this unconverted energy. And today we're talking about the unconverted energy of anger. And so this is so important. We have to get that anger integrated, processed and integrated. It has to become integrated with our prefrontal cortex stuff, our morals, our values, our problems, our resources, our skills, all of our problem solving, not our problems, but our knowledge. We need it integrated with that. That stuff living from there is so much different. You will find yourself very, very grounded. You will find yourself very certain, very clear. You will find yourself very confident. You will find yourself unmovable. You will find yourself convinced in your own truth. That's powerful stuff. That is abuser repellents right there. Abusers depend upon being able to grab your nervous system as your remote control and make you feel scared so they can make you do this, make you feel this so they can do that, violate your boundaries this way so that you can do that, so that they can have this from you. They rely on your losing your prefrontal cortex and going into a survival state in order to have a place in your life. Right? You wonder after being with an abuser for however long why you're crying so much. Why you feel depleted and empty. You wonder why you feel confused, right? And it's a lot because the survival system is so activated by them. But if your anger is coming on, that is one more emotion that's not going to be fueling your survival system. And you will hear very clearly how this abuser is violating your boundaries. I was talking about this last week, and when I'm hearing people not be able to hold their boundaries, I'm either hearing I'm looking at this from a Chinese medicine standpoint. I'm either hearing that they need spleen and stomach work, that which is the energy of healthy boundaries. I offer interventions for that in my Facebook group. I've taught trainings on there. You can play with those. It really helps gather up, working with those meridians and that energy really helps gather up the energy to express your boundaries, to have boundaries, right? But working with this anger energy, which is it's wood energy in Chinese medicine. It's the force needed, the energy needed to actually have boundaries to run. And so when these things are out of repair, when they're not functioning, people just can't. And so we in healthy brain function is being able to set goals and reach goals. One goal being having a boundary, expressing a boundary, right? But also to be able to set a boundary, it needs to be safe, and your survival system has to understand that it's safe for you to say no right now. So boundary work is a lot of safety work. It's a lot of work with the survival system. And so it's not just go say yes, because if you or go say no, if you say no and your survival system's like, no, 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 don't say no, it's not safe. And you get over there and you work past the fatigue it puts on you and the stomach and you're going to throw up and you actually get no out of your mouth. This could be more harmful than beneficial. Not always. But to go against your survival system is a very difficult, painful thing. And with a couple rounds of tapping or eye movementing or some intervention, all of a sudden your survival system is able to receive the message that it's safe to set this boundary. That it was, oh, I was wrong. All of a sudden you will see a switch instantly. It will be less scary, less intense, and all of a sudden you feel like you can just say it. And I like to work on it so much that it's not scary at all. But a lot of times life will have people moving with imperfection, right? I like to make sure it's all cleaned up and they're roller skating through it, rollerblade doing tricks, right? But a lot of times life moves faster and the brain already has enough systems. So it's like, I'm going to go do this, right? So that's awesome. But really to have this clarity comes from your anger. It comes from your system getting this information because your body's job is to give you all this report. And then the brain is supposed to then look at the report and make decisions, right? But this anger is holding very specific information that it needs to give that report. And you're gonna feel it in your body as a pretty big intensity. But once it gets through, you're gonna see the results of what your brain can do with this energy. Okay? And I think I've said that. I think I've covered that repeatedly. But I had a client recently. We were working on integrating their anger, and I love anger work. I love it because it's fun. It's it's a different. It's one of my preferred energies. Right? There's other energies that are really important: grief, energy, sorrow, hurt. Right? Yeah. Okay. This anger is fun for me. So so I suggested last week that we need to start integrating anger and just do some small practicing with anger because they were having a problem that they were stuck in and with an abuser, happened to be a company, right? So not just systems can be abusive. And then you're like, why am I still here? I don't even like this. Isn't good for me. And I'm tired of my boundaries being violated. And so what we did was we just started practicing, and they came again. And all of a sudden, we're talking about how clear it was. They just put this boundary up and they did X, Y, and Z. They're doing the things, right, that they weren't able to do before, that they needed to do to set new boundaries and actually get out of relationship with the abuser. And I didn't tell them, hey, you need to get out of this relationship. Hey, this is an abusive relationship. Hey, no, their brain should be figuring that out. What my job is your anger is not showing up here. I can read the signs that you're angry, but I'm not seeing your awareness that you're angry. I'm not seeing a healthy way of being with your anger. All of a sudden we opened that up and it was like, whoo, this anger's been shut down since childhood. And so in practicing that, they were really able to get a lot of clarity, a lot of insight, and set their boundaries. And the setting of the boundaries and watching abusers not be able to respect the boundary is a really powerful thing. This is how we are learning the inner world health of people. Because when you run into a boundary, you have to do an internal shift. You have to create an internal reorganization, a way of being with that boundary. If somebody's setting a boundary that you or some abuser cannot shift towards and reorganize with and respect, you're seeing that their inner world, they cannot process the information coming through their body in a healthy way that results in behavior change. And many people actually don't have this. I did not have this. Boundaries were not part of my family system. And so I was mad because I can't set any boundaries, but people were mad that I didn't respect any boundaries. Right? So this was something that I had to really, really work on. And it had a lot to do with the integration of my anger. And it's something I see all the time. And I wouldn't have told you, I didn't know then I'm integrating my anger. Ooh, my dog is tearing my door down. Anyway, actually, I can't even pause this to go have some words with the dog. Let me pause for a moment. All right. So thank you for waiting. This skill is part of your system's communication style, but it's, if you don't get it processed, you don't ever know what it means. Like, this is the converter of emotion to information, to understanding, to all those things. And that's why some people tell me, I don't know what to say. And a lot of that means that this information has not made it from the body where you can sense that you need to say something. It hasn't made it there to the front of the brain where you are very clear on what you need to say. And so if you have a ton of anger, even if it's just repressed anger, you're like, oh, I know I'm an angry person. People have told me I'm angry, but I don't really feel angry. Or if you're having outbursts of anger, the wonderful thing is that your system is trying to convert this energy. And the wonderful thing is when you get this stuff converted, you're about to have a lot of kindness and a lot of assertiveness, which when you're an angry person, or you're labeled an angry person, you feel not kind, you feel mean, you feel this, you feel that. That's because this energy is not being utilized by your system the way that it needs to be. It's like a lamp. We are wired like lamps. Like, the wiring has to go all the way up to the lamp and turn the light bulb on. If there's a short circuit anywhere, the energy is going to flow through and there's going to be problems and there will be no light at the end of that. And so what we do is we find where your wiring is not happening properly, or where you have short circuits in your ability to process anger. And we just sit right there and work on that with an intervention. Your brain can totally fix that and rewire that so that the energy will flow past that point and further on. And then it might stop somewhere else and say, nope, can't right here. And then we're going to use an intervention right there to get your brain to do the work to rewire that and wire your nervous system to properly utilize and harness anger. So this is exciting. This, I don't know that this is so exciting for other people, but when you can say no, or when you can start protecting yourself, and when your inner ability to protect yourself turns on, that is powerful. And I don't know what it's going to look like for you. And as a matter of fact, a lot of times protecting oneself is a skill, right? So it will evolve over time. Brains create mastery. So what we turn on will just be the beginning of the amazing healthy program your system is able to develop over time in skill and practice and learning. And it will want to, and it will review things, and you, that wasn't very well done. So, and then you can get back in there and run that, what happened in there through your processor, get your brain to look at it. It'll shift that. It'll say, next time we're going to do this. You don't even have to know that's what it's doing. That's what brains do. That's why athletes rewatch their games, and they're looking for specific things so they can see where they need to do the work, where they need to work in practice, where they need to practice, what needs to shift, what they did right, what they did. Brains do that automatically. Now, because you've got a disorder of anxiety, depression, or complex PTSD, I'm not just going to trust your brain's process to do that, because that needs to be built. And a lot of times in early childhood, the way it's built, with parents comforting and supporting children all the way completely through intense emotion, did not happen because of abuse or neglect, or the inability of the parent to do that. And so that process may not be very available to you. That's why we're going to manually work that process until your system can do that for you. Okay? And so what happens here, this is what I see happen. When people can integrate their anger, there's my dog again. I'm going to take the time to say no for a moment and wait for my dog. Because we're learning. So, and I'm setting boundaries, right? And that dog is obviously having a challenge integrating. Hold on. Okay. Now I have to remember where I was. And there's dog having a hard time. I haven't set this boundary before. But watch, you're going to see whether my dog can make the internal adjustment or not. Okay, we'll see. So, gosh, what was I saying? I was talking about, I don't know where I was, but I want to just finish up with some abuser, some more of this abuser thing. But um, okay, what we were talking about, what happens when people can integrate their anger in. Okay, one of the things that holds us in abuser land is that abusers will, because you have this ability not to integrate your anger, abusers will push, 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 and push, and they'll actually do abusive things to you. How about that? For a couple of purposes. And this is to control you, because this is the strategy they've learned to control you. And children do this because they might have learned it because they saw an area where it's just positive reinforcement, right? If I do this to mom, even though it causes her pain, I get what I want, which could be attention or any number of things, cookies, cereal, right? But abusers will do violating things, right? And really, if you're a repressor, you're going to be working very hard in this place to hold it together. And you might actually also have some other things begin, like I'm not good enough, I'm less than. You might actually believe the abusive things that are going on, which then will put you in a place, a survival state enough that they can control you. When we're in a survival state, we're in our least powerful, least autonomous place, because the survival system It just needs to survive. And if that means going along with the abuser, we'll do that. It's not a thinking center. It's just a response activator. And so if you're a fawner and you're a pleaser, once you go into a survival state, you start pleasing, that person knows to get you there. They just do some abusive things and boom, there you are. And if you have no anger running through you in processing, then you're just going to shift there. That's why we need to end that pattern, and processing the anger is part of that. The sadness, the grief, the anger is part of that to really get you active in these dynamics. If you're one of those people that will explode in anger, then all they'll do is they'll poke and you explode. This also serves them because your anger is not integrated. You're still going into a survival state. And so now you're going to abuse her back. And now this one gets to go have the privilege of going into the victim dance, right? And there are lots of benefits in being in the victim dance. Otherwise, humans would never do it, right? And it might be a familiar place for them. Maybe that's where they were in their family of origin. Maybe they don't even consciously know they're doing the victim dance, right? I found myself here in this one. This is a fabulous pattern that I developed and learned in my family of system. So when I saw it, it was like, anyway, here it is. And so, but what we can do once they do this to you, and then you're in this mode, right? Now you're yelling and hollering, and now they get to go play the victim mode. Now, eventually you're going to come out of that regulated state, and you're going to feel really bad, and then you're going to start doing whatever they want you to do, right? Which is apologize profusely, all the things, sorrow, right? And now we're in the abuser triangle. We're in the cycle. And so none of those work. And so really what happens is we want to get you to process your anger, integrate your anger, because now when this person starts poking, you're going to do a whole new response. You will likely set healthy boundaries. You will say, you know what, I'm leaving here, but you will not go into a survival state. And that means you'll have access to your morals, your values, your skill sets, your resources, your plans, your strategies, your problem solving ability. And this abuser cycle is not about any of that stuff. And so if you're staying there and they're not, it's not a fit. And eventually it becomes so repulsive because they're actually not getting what they want. And so lots of different things start shifting around this. And obviously, if you're in a domestic violence situation or a place where you are truly not safe, this is not time to, safety's first. This is not time to change this dynamic. This is time to actually get help before you start integrating and start setting your boundaries. But for the rest of the world that is not in an actually dangerous, life-threatening situation, you can start making those shifts now. And we do this by processing anger. We do this by, in those moments, and even after those moments, there's so much anger available, which is great. Let's get that processed. It's up and flowing. Your body is actively right now sending anger energy through your nervous system. Let's make sure we help it by getting it through the survival system. Let's get that survival system open so that your natural internal communication process is working and is creating the actual results we want to see, which is the conversion of this energy into an active form. An active form? I don't think that's the words I wanted. It will be an active form, but it will be an active form that's integrated into your desires, your dreams, your morals, your values, right? That's where we want you to go. We want all of your energy, which emotions are all of it. That's a big energy source for us. And we want all of that moving through that part of the brain that creates thriving. The less your time you're spending in a survival state with your survival system fueled, the less you are actually creating survival in your life, right? And that survival energy is what is so attractive to abusers. And so this is counterintuitive. This is something that is so subtle but creates change every single time. And so I can't impress upon it enough. We're talking about this transformation and becoming abuser proof at such a foundational level that you might even overlook the power of it. So, but I encourage you to try it. This is something that I teach people to do. I have an upcoming workshop. All my upcoming workshops, these are some of the things we're working on, is really getting people's brain moving to process and integrate the emotions that are available. This is not sexy talk. Like, it's not like, ooh, that sounds amazing, but it is really it is really amazing. Okay, it is really the stuff you are looking for. This is why things don't work, and your brain needs to be processing this stuff that will register as pain or stress in your brain. It is stressful for us to be angry. It's stressful for us to be hurt. We need that stuff processed. And then your brain has what it needs to create solutions. Your brain, you will watch yourself begin to interact with people differently. You will begin to watch yourself feel differently. You will watch your mood lighten. You will watch clarity come in. And in this workshop that I'm doing this week, what you're going to notice is feeling better, feeling more in control, feeling more confident, feeling more authentic in like a week of time. Like, it is such a quick transformational thing, because I know that when people are doing this work, we only have so much availability for healing, right? And the rest is like, we got to cope with all this stuff. We want to be able to pack a powerful punch in a very short amount of time to create massive change within our system so that we can get more of that space. That's what we're doing. And then we can do that again and get more space, and again and get more space. And pretty soon we've got enough space to really start sinking down to those transformational root layers, and that deep in the subconscious mind, to create even more shifts and more wellness, because we want to repair massive systems in your world, like the ability to protect yourself. We want to repair that. Well, the ability to address conflict. We want to repair that. The ability to feel internal joy. We want to do that. I have something flashing up here. Recommended keyframe rates. Okay, I don't know what they're saying to me, but having said that, but there are, if you know that you have complex childhood trauma and you want to heal that, and you want to restore health and wellness from the inside out, I have a program for that. I have two. One is an intensive coaching program where I will walk you through that step by step. And the other one is an online course. I have a course giving that gives you the exact instructions you need at the exact time that you need them, so that you can do the healing work. And if you're someone, you're like, I don't know, or I just have a little bit of work to do, or I want to see if this would work for me first before I do something like that, join a workshop. And so either all of the healing options are available for you on my website. So I invite you to go there at rachelmccloud.com. I've included the link, and that's really, that's what I want to share today. So this thing makes it so easy. And looking at this as just converting energy is such an easy way. I get clients with such complex issues in their life, and my job is to help them resolve it. But I know I just have to do one thing. I have to help their brain convert the available energy. Everything for their transformation is within them. It's blocked and stuck. And so all I need to do is help them open this up, get that communication loop uninterrupted by the survival system, and all of a sudden they're meeting life head on, courageously, boldly, authentically. It is wonderful. So I invite you on that journey with me. Go to my website, rachelmccloud.com. And if you got value from this, I encourage you to like this video, share this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.